She told me we'd start a new life in Berlin, but she was only escaping me. If I can get him to quit everything, I won't feel guilty leaving. I found that line in her notebook. The day she told me we should move to Berlin, I thought we were finally saving each other. I didn't realize I was the only one who needed saving. That line's been stuck in my head for a while now. I guess when things fall apart slowly, you don't really notice at first. You think it's just life being hard. Work stress. Growing up. Maybe a phase. But sometimes, it's not a phase. Sometimes, it's a goodbye wearing a friendly smile. Let me take you back. My name's Mark. I'm 35. I used to think I had a pretty decent life. I married young. My wife Elena and I were that artsy couple everyone thought was going to move to Europe, live off coffee and novels, become the people who really lived. You know the type. We met in a photography class. She was smarter than me. Sharper. She had this whole way of seeing the world that made you want to be part of it. And for a while, I really thought we were going to do it, the big dream. Travel. Create. Escape the 9-to-5 grind. Not end up like everyone else with lawn chairs and Costco memberships. But then, life happened. Jobs happened. Bills. Temporary jobs that became permanent. A small apartment that became a mortgage. And somehow, without ever agreeing to it, we became the kind of people we swore we'd never be. Predictable. Tired. Suburban. Still, we had our routines. Dinner at 7. She always drank tea at night. I always sat on the porch for a few minutes before bed. And even though we didn't talk much, it felt like maybe that was normal. People settle in. Maybe passion fades, but partnership stays. I didn't think anything was wrong. I didn't think I had to worry. Until one night. I had just come home from work. It was late. I'd stayed behind to help cover a coworker who had a sick kid. I remember the lights were off except for the kitchen, and she was sitting at the table with this look on her face, like she was about to ask me for a divorce, but was too tired to make it dramatic. She just said, "Do you ever feel like we're wasting our lives?" I laughed. Thought it was just a mood. Maybe she saw something on social media. Someone backpacking through Thailand. I told her, "Well, yeah, I think about that every time I open my inbox." But she was serious. She started talking about Berlin. Not just a vacation, moving there. Full-on restart. She said she'd found some kind of remote gig through a friend, something with design work. She said I could take a few months off, find something out there. We could rent out our house. Sell the car. Be bold again. At first, I thought it was crazy. Like, absolutely insane. We had responsibilities. Routines. My job might not have been glamorous, but it paid the bills. And we weren't kids anymore. But the more she talked, the more I saw this spark in her. This version of her I hadn't seen in years. The way she lit up. Like we were back in that photography class. And I'll admit it, I got swept up. We stayed up until 3 a.m., talking like we used to. About the streets of Berlin, living in a tiny flat, learning German. She even joked about me finally finishing that novel I'd been writing for 10 years. It felt like she wanted me again, not just tolerated me. So I said yes. Just like that. I said I'd do it. We'd go to Berlin. We'd run. Start over. No more routines. No more dead-eyed meetings. No more fake smiles. She kissed me that night like she hadn't in a long time. And I remember lying in bed afterward thinking, this is it. This is the thing that saves us. Maybe all couples lose themselves a little, but maybe some get to find each other again. And maybe this was our shot. God, I wish I'd known. Because looking back, that night was the beginning of the end. It just took me too long to see it. I didn't realize it then, but I was the only one packing for that dream. I gave up the job I hated so she could love me again. Funny how even the worst jobs teach you more than your own wife ever will. You ever have that feeling where you're doing something huge, something that's supposed to change your life, but it still doesn't feel real? That was me, standing in our kitchen with a cardboard box, taping up mugs we never used, packing books we both stopped reading years ago. Berlin was on the horizon. Elena was on fire. And I was floating. Not scared. Not excited. Just trying to convince myself this was really happening. Right after we agreed to leave, everything moved fast. Or maybe I just moved fast. I think I was afraid that if I didn't act quickly, she'd change her mind. Or worse, go cold again. So I jumped. Quit my job within a week. That was a whole thing. My manager asked me if I was okay. He said it like I was breaking up with him. I told him I was finally following a dream. He didn't believe me, but he shook my hand. I sold my car too. Gave it away for way less than it was worth. Put the cash in our joint savings. Figured we'd need every penny once we landed in Berlin. I even talked to a guy about renting out our house, gave notice to the landlord, started checking out tiny apartments in Kreuzberg online. But something weird started happening. Every time I did something big, like actually do one of the things we talked about, Elena would get quiet. Not angry, not mean, just distant. Flat. Like I'd just handed her something she said she wanted, but now it looked different in her hands. I tried to talk to her about it once. I said, "Hey, I'm doing all this stuff, but you don't seem excited anymore. Is something wrong?" She didn't even look up from her tea. Just said, "God, Mark, do you always have to overanalyze everything? Can't you just let things happen for once?" That stung. But fine. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Moving to another country isn't a weekend trip. I told myself not to push. Be supportive. Be strong. Be the man she wanted me to be. So I kept pushing forward. Alone. A week later, I started noticing the bags. Mine were packed. Little by little. Shirts folded. Tech stuff sorted. Passports ready. Hers? Still in the closet. She hadn't packed a thing. She kept saying she was working through it or trying to finish this client project before she could focus. Okay, fine. She was the planner, not me. Maybe she just worked better under pressure. She always had. But one night, something hit me. I was sitting on the floor, sorting old cables, the kind of mindless thing you do when you're too anxious to sit still, and I realized Elena hadn't booked the flights. She talked about options, shared screenshots, but there was never a confirmation. I checked our shared email. Nothing. I asked her casually that night, "Hey, when are we booking the flights?" She sighed. Not irritated, not upset, just like she was tired of pretending. She said, "God, do you have to control everything all the time? Can't you just let things be spontaneous for once in your life?" That line hit me harder than I expected, because it wasn't just about the trip. It felt like it was about me. Like who I was, the guy who plans things, the guy who follows through. That guy was the reason she didn't want to be here anymore. Still, I apologized. Can you believe that? I apologized for caring too much about a life-changing move across continents, just so she wouldn't pull away again. I kept thinking, once we land, everything will be better. The air, the space, the chance to just breathe again. Maybe we needed a new city to fall back in love. But the cracks were already forming. I just didn't know how deep they went. I didn't know I was building a life raft for someone who had no intention of getting on. I thought we were writing a new story together. But when I found her notebook, I realized I was just a chapter she was trying to end quietly. Some betrayals come with shouting, slammed doors, and broken plates. Others come in the form of a leather-bound notebook tucked between two scarves in the back of your wife's closet. It happened by accident. I was trying to find a suitcase for her, the one she said she'd start packing later this week. I had taken her word for it, like I always did. But it was 3 weeks before the move and nothing of hers was in boxes. Nothing. When I opened the top shelf, I saw a black notebook. Looked old. Worn out. Not the kind she usually used for client notes or grocery lists. This one had that soft, battered look, the kind of thing people write secrets in. Now, I'll admit it, I shouldn't have opened it. But there was this nagging voice in my head saying, check. Just check. You're about to throw away your whole life for this woman. Make sure she's still in it with you. So I opened it. And the second I started reading, I felt the floor vanish under me. Page after page of stream of consciousness writing. Fragments. Letters. Bits of poetry, maybe. She'd always been good with words, but this was different. The first entry that stuck with me said, "He's a good man, but good is another word for dull. I need fire. I need to feel like I exist again." And that was one of the nicer parts. There were entire sections where she talked about the plan, not the move, but this emotional strategy she had. She wrote, "If I can just get him to take the first step, if I can get him to quit, to let go of his anchors, maybe then I won't feel so guilty for leaving." That was the moment I realized. This wasn't about Berlin. This wasn't about starting over. This was about her starting over, without me. She didn't want to be saved. She didn't want to be with me in a new city. She just wanted me to fall on my sword first, so she could feel clean walking away. Reading that notebook was like watching a slow-motion betrayal. Not cheating. Not screaming matches. Just cold thoughts. Strategic detachment. A long, well-written breakup that she'd been rehearsing in her head for months. Maybe years. And I think the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing how calm she was about it. She wasn't struggling with guilt. She wasn't torn. She just didn't want to be the bad guy. So she made me into the desperate one. The dreamer. The emotional one. The guy who quit his job, sold his car, threw away security, while she kept her safety net intact. She was watching me fall, thinking, this is what it takes. This is how I get out. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't storm into the kitchen, wave the notebook in her face, and yell. No. I closed it, put it back exactly where I found it, walked downstairs, sat on the porch, and I let it burn in my chest for hours. Because here's the thing she forgot. She might have been planning her escape quietly, but now I was planning mine too, and mine was going to be smarter. If she was auditioning for a solo life, I decided I'd help her rehearse it. Carefully, quietly, one string at a time. After I found the notebook, I didn't say a word. Not a single hint that I knew anything. I didn't flinch when she kissed me on the cheek the next morning. I didn't wince when she talked about which cafes we'd explore in Berlin. I even smiled when she pulled up a fake Airbnb listing, pretending she was deep in planning mode. I was done reacting. She wanted a man who would jump off a cliff so she didn't have to push? Fine. But if I was going down, I was taking her version of the story with me. That night, after she fell asleep, I got on my laptop and started doing what she should have been doing all along. I built my exit strategy. First, I opened a new bank account under my name only. Quiet bank, online only, nothing flashy. I started redirecting what little money we still had left in savings. The same savings I built when I sold my car and cashed out my work bonuses for Berlin. A few hundred at a time. Nothing noticeable. No sudden drops. Then I called the airline and found out. Surprise! No tickets had ever been booked. I asked for flight prices just for myself. I wasn't even sure if I'd actually fly anywhere. I just wanted to know what the escape would cost if I needed it. Then came the house. Technically, it wasn't ours. We were renting, but we were on a shared lease, and I'd been the one handling payments. I reached out to the landlord, told him I'd be transitioning out, and wanted my name removed from everything once the month was up. He agreed. Friendly guy. I told him my wife would be staying. He chuckled and said, "You wouldn't be the first." The guy had no idea. Then came the lawyer. I didn't want to file for divorce yet. That would tip my hand. I just needed to know what I was entitled to, how to protect myself, what not to do if she made the first legal move. And the lawyer, this sharp, gray-haired woman who clearly had heard 1,000 stories like mine, leaned back in her chair and said, "Don't confront her. Don't get emotional. Just keep everything documented and let her make the mistake." It was the first time in weeks I felt like I was breathing air instead of smoke. I started collecting everything. Screenshots, emails, bank transactions, even photos of the notebook pages. I didn't need them yet, but if she ever tried to spin the story, I'd be ready. Meanwhile, Elena kept floating through the house like everything was fine. She lit candles at night, played old French records, drank wine like she was already living in Europe, kept telling people at dinner parties that we were finally doing it. God, she was good, but not good enough. I noticed little things, like how she was still signing one-year contracts with her clients even though we were leaving in 3 weeks, or how she renewed a local gym membership, or how she never gave our landlord a final notice. And once, when I came home early, I heard her on the phone saying, "Well, he thinks we're going, so I just have to let it play out." She didn't even stop talking when I walked into the hallway. She just gave me that same practice smile and said, "Hey babe, just talking to Sarah." Sure. I just nodded, walked right past her, opened the fridge, took a sip of milk. Not a flicker of anger. That was the thing about Elena. She was waiting for a scene. She was expecting the confrontation, the emotional explosion. That way, she could say I was unstable, dramatic, selfish. But I wasn't giving her that. I wasn't even mad anymore. I just wanted her to see the fallout from the silence she built. And I wanted her to feel the absence she thought she was ready for. Not someday. Soon. She said her bags were packed. I knew they never were. I let her think I still believed her, right up until the moment I walked out of the house and never looked back. There's something weird about silence in the morning when it's supposed to be the start of something big. You expect it to be chaos. Alarms going off. Bags by the door. Someone shouting, "Did you grab the passports?" You expect tension, movement, life. But that morning, it was still, dead still, like the house had already decided not to go. I woke up at 6. Didn't sleep much the night before. Couldn't. My body felt like it had been holding a weight for weeks, and this was the final stretch before the drop. I didn't want drama. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to do this on my terms. I got dressed quietly. Jeans, jacket, passport in my chest pocket. My backpack was already by the door. I had packed 3 days ago. I knew exactly what I was taking, and more importantly, what I was leaving behind. I walked into the bedroom. She was still in bed, eyes closed, face turned toward the wall. Maybe asleep, maybe pretending. I stood there for a moment. No suitcase, no bag, no charger, no travel shoes, nothing. 3 hours before our flight. She didn't even try to fake it anymore. And I realized something. I didn't feel heartbroken. I didn't feel rage. I just felt done. Done with the games. Done with the lies wrapped in poetry. Done trying to make someone stay who already left months ago. I walked downstairs, poured myself a cup of coffee, took a long, slow sip. Then I picked up my phone and typed out one text. Just one. I'm heading to the airport. Come if you're ready. I put the phone down. I didn't look at it again. And then, I left. No goodbyes. No last look. No dramatic pause in the doorway. I walked out like I was going to work. Like it was just another Tuesday. Which, in a way, it was. Except this time, I wasn't coming back. And no, I didn't go to Berlin. That was never the point. I took a train 2 cities over, checked into a short-term rental I had lined up, and started something better than a new life. A clean one. No performance. No manipulation. No quiet resentment building in pretty rooms. Just me. Alone. Free. Later that day, I checked my phone. For missed calls. One voicemail. A string of texts that started casual. Where are you? Are you at the gate? Then panic. Mark, where are you? I thought we were doing this. Why are you doing this? You didn't even say goodbye. That one made me laugh. Not in a cruel way. Just empty. Because saying goodbye would have meant pretending there was something to say goodbye to. And then silence. She didn't call again. Not that day. Not the next. Not the one after. It was like she'd been caught in the middle of her own performance and didn't know how to improvise once the audience walked out. Which is exactly what I did. She thought she was the one leaving me. But I'd already left her. A month passed. 31 days of silence. Not a single call. Not one "I miss you." No tearful breakdowns. No letters. No desperate airport scenes. Nothing. And that told me everything. She never expected me to leave. She expected me to wait, to beg, maybe, or rage, or plead for her to still go. She wanted to be the one to make the choice. The one to close the door and walk away. But I never gave her that ending. I just disappeared from her version of the story. The apartment I found wasn't much. 1 bedroom, laminate floors, creaky pipes. But it had one thing our house never did. Peace. I started working again. Nothing fancy. Freelance copywriting, some editing on the side. Quiet gigs. Enough to pay rent and eat. Enough to breathe. And I slept. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in a sweat, wondering what version of Elena I'd meet that day. A few people reached out. Old friends. Mutuals. Most of them didn't know what had happened. Elena hadn't told them much. Just that I'd left, apparently without warning. I didn't correct them. Let her write her version. I wasn't playing the villain or the victim anymore. I was just done being cast in someone else's story. But one message stood out. A friend of hers, someone I barely knew, sent me a DM out of nowhere. Said she didn't want to get involved, but thought I should know. She attached a screenshot. It was from one of those anonymous online journals people use to vent. Except Elena had forgotten anonymity is fragile when you reuse the same usernames. In the post, she wrote about our move. Or rather, how I had abandoned her at the gate. How she'd tried so hard to save our marriage. How I was emotionally unstable and refused to get help. She said I left her with no money, no notice, and no apology. I laughed, because that's the kind of story you write when you think the other person doesn't have receipts. So I took a screenshot of her post. I added it to a folder on my drive titled Insurance, along with photos of the notebook, bank transfers, landlord emails, flight logs. I still didn't plan to use it, but I could if I needed to. Let her play innocent in public. I had proof of her script before it ever went live. Then, one day, weeks later, she finally tried calling again. No number. Blocked ID. But I picked up. Her voice was quiet. Tired. Maybe she'd been crying. Or maybe she was just tired of holding the mask up. She said, "I don't understand how you could just leave." And I said, "I didn't leave. You just stopped noticing when I did. Silence. Then she asked the question I think she thought would undo me. Was any of it even real? And I told her the truth. Yes. That's the part that hurts. She didn't respond. She hung up. I haven't heard from her since. People always want the ending. They want to know if she came back. If I forgave her. If I moved on. They want a bow. Something neat. But life doesn't work like that. What I got instead was an apartment with one key. No drama. No locked phone. No passive-aggressive glances. No plans made to be broken. Just me. An air I could finally breathe. And that was enough.